Even as the 2025 college football season comes to a close, the news around USC football hasn't slowed down one bit. With the transfer portal window approaching, the Alamo Bowl ahead, and major questions surrounding staff retention, there's still a lot to talk about. So today, I thought we'd embrace the holiday spirit and put together a USC football roster Christmas wish list covering the transfer portal additions and roster re-signings I'd most like to see from this team. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe as it really helps the channel a lot. And with that being said, let's get into the video. I'm sure many of you have noticed that USC has started announcing player re-signings on social media, and for the most part, many of the key players are already locked in. However, as Shotgun Spratling pointed out, as of December 23, 2025, USC has only announced the return of one linebacker. The most obvious reason for this is that Chad Bowden and Lincoln Riley have clearly identified the linebacker room as a weakness on the roster, and believe the transfer portal is the best way to fix that. And the good news is, there's a plethora of linebacker talent currently in the portal, and I'll single out a few names that stand out to me. The first linebacker I want to talk about is Auburn linebacker Robert Woodyard Jr. As you could see, he was a first-team All-SEC selection according to PFF. Woodyard stands at 6 foot, 245 pounds, which would make him the heaviest linebacker on USC's roster, and it seems like he has 1 year of eligibility remaining. This is a player with proven SEC production, totaling 67 tackles and 2 sacks this season. He's a very instinctive player, and it's clear that Bowden and Riley are looking for someone with experience and physicality at that position. If the price is right, I wouldn't be surprised at all if USC takes a serious swing here. Now, if you've been keeping up with the USC defensive coordinator situation, you know that former Texas DC Pete Kwiatkowski was recently fired, and there are rumors that he could be USC's next defensive coordinator. If that hire were to happen, he could potentially bring along one of his former linebackers, Liona Lefau. Lefau checks in at 6'1", 227 pounds, so he doesn't quite have the size of a traditional Mike linebacker, which is the linebacker position I think USC needs the most. If SC were to bring him in, I wouldn't expect him to play that role, and would rather see him at Will or Sam. However, he's been in college football for a very long time, and has been a part of some very strong run defenses, which would bring valuable experience to the room, especially if Pete K were to come over. There are a few other names at linebacker that would be interesting. Mikey D'Amato out of Cal Poly had an absolutely massive season, putting up 137 tackles, 6.5 sacks, and an interception, while also being named the second-team AP All-American. He'll be heading into his senior year at 6 foot, 230 pounds, and obviously has the production and experience you are looking for. The only real question with D'Amato is whether that production will translate against higher level competition, as we have seen guys like DJ Harvey not really be able to make that jump. Another name is John Kamara out of Kansas. He's inexperienced, but incredibly athletic at 6'4", 236 pounds, while hosting a 40-inch vertical, being able to run at speeds over 22 miles per hour, and being able to bench 390 pounds. This is a player who hasn't played a ton, and would need development, but with 3 years of eligibility left, I wouldn't mind USC taking a chance on his upside. Moving on to another position of need, wide receiver, there are a few portal targets I want to touch on briefly. I'm sure most of you have already heard about Michigan State receiver Nick Marsh, so I won't spend too much time on him. He's an absolute freak athlete and a potential first-round NFL draft pick, and he's easily my number one receiver in the portal. There are also guys who haven't entered yet but could, like Ryan Williams out of Alabama and Cam Coleman out of Auburn, both extremely talented players to keep an eye on. But one receiver I want to highlight is Colorado wide receiver Omarion Miller. At 6'2", 210 pounds, Miller is a big play receiver who would likely be wide receiver 1 on this roster next season. He put up strong production despite the chaos at quarterback at Colorado, and I'm sure USC fans haven't forgotten his 196-yard performance against SC back in 2023. The only concern with Miller is that he has a similar build to several receivers already on the roster, but given his talent and explosiveness, that wouldn't worry me much at all. Finally, we get to what I believe is the most important part of roster building, player retention. USC has already re-signed most of its star players heading into 2026, but there are still a few key guys who haven't announced their return yet. The biggest fish, in my opinion, is Elijah Paige. Paige is simply not someone you could replace through the transfer portal. If he had stayed healthy the entire season, he would have likely been a first-round NFL draft pick this year. I don't really need to say much more. You all know how special of a player Elijah Paige is. Another name to watch is Hassan Longstreet. He's a very talented quarterback who likely won't start next season, and while it won't be the end of the world if USC lost him, his long-term potential is through the roof. I would love to see what he could become after 2 years of Lincoln Riley's development heading into 2027. From what I've heard, Longstreet plans to wait until after the bowl game to make his decision. Given how loaded the quarterback market already is in the portal, I'd expect him to stay for at least one more season. Alani Noah, Desmond Stevens, and Jide Abasiri are 3 more starters that USC would love to retain. But if I'm Chad Bowden, my top priority above everything else is making sure Elijah Paige is back in Cardinal and gold. That's all I have for this video. I hope you have a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you in the next one.